All right, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up to the AMA with Rob Jackson or rwjblue. Throughout the session, if you have extra questions that you'd like to ask, please go ahead and post them in the Discord channel for this chat. If you don't have access to that, please post in the EC Mods channel and someone will give you access. We've been collecting questions for the past couple of weeks, and not just questions. We've also been collecting thank yous to Rob for everything he does, and folks have participated in that. So we will be sharing some of those throughout the AMA as well. To get started, I thought we would actually start with a thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I would like some folks to be able to read these as we also share them. This is from someone who says, never had a dull moment when interacting with Rob. He's my go-to person for any questions that I might have in the Ember world. From brainstorming sessions to solving problems, I have personally learned a lot from him. There's no other way to say it. We'd be lost without Rob. Thank you for everything you do and for being so awesome.
You're welcome.
So, thank you, Rob. And to warm up, Rob, we just have a couple of quick fire questions. So say the first thing that comes to mind. Ready?
Bang.
Okay. What's something that's not on your LinkedIn profile? Obligatory question.
Lots of stuff. Pretty much LinkedIn profile, mine at least, is only business stuff. So probably something about barbecue.
Okay. Barbecue.
I have like
Why rwjblue?
blue? It is actually a very not interesting story. RWJ are my initials, so my middle name is William. Yeah, my parents got it backwards. Like, you've heard of Billy Bob, but never Bob Billy, right? Anyways,
right.
Whatever. They don't know what they were thinking. Yeah, so that easily answers that question. I also played high school football, and it's where I began my lifelong passion for eating way too much food and then forgot to do the exercise that goes with it. Anyways, nice. Did football, and I was a lineman, as you might imagine. And the way we kept track of what, I'm going to say holes, what gaps we're responsible for was by color. So I was in charge of the blue hole. Anyways, that is super old and long ago, but that is what it means.
Nice.
It's one of those things where you pick a name, you pick a handle back when you're like, 13 or 14, and it seems so important. And then whatever, 30 something years later, it seems really dumb.
Yep. What is your favorite delimiter?
I reject the concept of the question.
I accept your
we all know that tabs are better than spaces, but no one can do it. So get off my lawn.
All right, seems fine. What's your favorite podcast?
So this is a pretty easy one for me. But it probably, I don't know if it's pretty common or not, but I listen to Critical Role. That is, there is probably no other single thing that's provided me as much entertainment as the two campaigns of that podcast. There's some couple hundred episodes and something like 3 or 4 hours each episode, and that podcast got me through the dark days of the early pandemic times. I just plowed through probably 100 episodes, the first campaign. So anyways.
Nice. All right. So now that we've done the warm up, let's jump into our first question. Converting a problematic app to using Tract tends to be a big bang event. Octane rapidly exposes state problems like multiple sources of truth being held together by imperative approaches with long chains of causation. Conversion requires revisiting every bad design decision or the failure to decide that a team has ever made. And fixing one thing tends to require that you fix everything else. Do you have any guidance for the process of gradual improvement while continuing to ship the half-converted code?
Yes, but it will be somewhat unsatisfying, as I guess usually happens with the answer. There's a bunch of talks that you're going to see at this conference that they're going to like sort of talk around and talk through this problem. I think there's a bunch of different ways to attack it. One, for example, is you could leverage TypeScript and do a TypeScript conversion as a way to discover where that root state's coming from and be able to track the flow. That's one way to do it. Another is you could leverage linting to prevent you from introducing any new things like computed and force you down the tracked only lifestyle for all new code, but leave existing code to be updated. Something like lint to do, which I think, Mel, you'll be talking a little bit about in your talk. And I think Brian Mishkin is also talking about linting in his talk. So I think there's a couple on that angle. I think the main thing to do is make sure that you don't continue to introduce the same bad pattern, if you will. Like once you realize you have the state problem, you need to try to avoid it. New code, especially component-based code, components themselves, especially Glimmer components, can be their own root states, and you don't really have to continue following the same paradigms that you used to with Ember.component or like services themselves with implicit state. And I think that is a good way to go. Most apps are probably writing more components than they are any other individual object type. And every new component you start, even though it's the root state for something, is a great place to begin migrating that. And it's that section, that juncture and below to using tracked. As far as moving upwards from the component level, I think using to-dos, possibly considering TypeScript or something to that effect, as a way to bootstrap that refactor in a way that makes you safe and resilient to the bugs, I think is good. One other thing I want to point out, which I realize that answer is like super not satisfying, but like most programming things, the answer is it depends, and every code base is different. Every code base I've worked in that have helped people migrate Octane to has had this problem. This is not a unique problem to you, whomever asked the question. It's just a really common thing. What it's pointing out, though, is really important, which is that we understand that there were some fundamental state management problems in the original classic Ember programming model, and tracked really does make it better. The question asker infers that tracked is better. I think is better, and hopefully you all do too. But I think it's nice to point out that, hey, we learned something and we're making it better. That middle state kind of sucks a little bit, but the middle state is just pointing out the transitionary period, and eventually your app is going to get on past that. Like we all maintain apps, like we're in Ember because it lasts a long time, and we want to maintain the apps over long periods of time. And this is just a small bump in the road. That's it.
That's a great answer. Before we get to our next question, I'm going to share another thank you. This is two. Rob is always a pleasure to work with. Even when we disagree, it doesn't make me want to work with him less, which I think that's a very positive thing. Rob is the backbone of the projects. He seems to be everywhere doing everything, and he's always generous with his time. I can't imagine Ember without Rob, nor can I. Let's just jump right into the next question. Not all of Octane is here yet. 322 to 325 have delivered the foundation for experiments to define the shape of features, but only named blocks has been delivered as a feature ready for production code. How soon will resources, cached values, and template imports be integral framework features like on and fn?
So I will, I'll answer the question. However, I also reject the question slightly. Sorry. Octane is here. Octane fully shipped, and all of the features that we intended to ship in Octane did ship and were shipped back in like I think 3.16 was the first LTS version that had them, but that happened. Now, as with all good things, by the time you get the good things you think you want today, there are other good things that you want that you think can't live without. So this is the curse of getting nice things, basically. All of the things that were mentioned here, I think, resources, cache values, template imports, those things were not originally part of the Octane edition RFC, and also are things that are still going to be landed in the Octane timeline. The thing that Octane provided was compatibility and new programming model for tracked state reactivity, and for using native classes, using regular old JavaScript stuff, and not having to have Ember special like .extend thing where you got to remember the nuances of, oh, but don't put this kind of mutable object on this prototype thing because you're screwed. That's what Octane was about, and it delivered. It did that. These other things are going to be as big an impact, I think, to app authors in 2 years, in the 5 years, whatever time frame, as Octane has been for us so far already, but they're just going to be part of a new thing. Whether they land in Octane timeframe before another edition happens or not, I guess somewhat TBD. To call it a couple of them, cached values, the @cached decorator RFC has landed, and there is a polyfill for it. There's also a caching primitive that you can use to destructure, to compose your caching stuff if you don't just want to use the @cache decorator. Those both can be used today. The template imports also, as of Ember 3.25, can be used today. There's a package called Ember template imports, and it works. There's rough edges, and there's some stuff that doesn't feel super good. For example, things like editor integration, nice highlighting support for inline templates in a JavaScript file doesn't feel quite up to snuff. That's why those aren't part of the default stack that people get out of the box. And that's part of what being on an edition is about. An edition is the coalescing of a bunch of things that landed up to the edition point that are now ready to be used and combined into a holistic mental model and a holistic way of thinking about the problem. These other features, while you can adopt them now and they work now, cache with the polyfill and template imports with the add-on, they don't feel like ingrained built-in features yet, because we haven't, there's like rough edges, and we haven't really updated all the guides to tell you to use them and all that stuff, because we're still trying to figure out the right way to go.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And that's a really good way for folks to think about, what does Octane as an edition mean? All right, thanks for being amazing, Rob. You've unblocked me countless times over the years, and I truly appreciate that. While on the face of it, it looked like you were only unblocking a single person, you were actually unblocking an entire team at EmberConf. You're the very definition of a force multiplier, and your influence is felt in every corner of the community. And amen to that. For our next question, what is the status of major ecosystem projects like Fastboot, Ember Engines, and Embroider?
So that is a big bucket. So let me break it down individually. So Fastboot is, for those that may not know, it is what we call the sort of end-to-end server-side rendering component. It's sort of composed of a couple different pieces. part of it hooks into the development pipeline, part of it hooks into the rendering engine. So anyways, that whole umbrella of things is Fastboot. There's EmberCLI Fastboot as a package, there's a Fastboot package, and there's a whole little ecosystem of other, like a Prember is another common user of Fastboot. Fastboot itself has gone through a bit of a resurgence. We in the last, say, 6 months or maybe 4 months, 3 months, we have a Fastboot team that's meeting now weekly. Sometimes that team has been focused on delivering, getting things up to date and getting them current, and pushing forward some of the high level features. Some things, for example, rehydration is a feature that you still have to opt into with a flag that sounds very scary. And part of the goal of this team is to develop RFCs so that we can remove those flags and remove those opt-ins and make it the default stack out of the box, for example. There's a number of things on the rehydration side that still have to be addressed, but I think we have a general plan and we're going to get there. And now that we're sort of revitalizing a core group of folks that are meeting about it, we're making really good progress. Anybody that wants to be involved in that should join us. Come chat in the Fastboot channel in Discord and just say you're interested in joining the thing, and we can add the right labels. We just it's a weekly meeting. We hold in with the Discord call. So it's open to folks to participate, even if you just want to listen in and see what we're thinking and talking about. Okay, so that's Fastboot. Ember engines. Actually, let me reverse it. Let me do Embroider for next. So Embroider is sort of a rethink, a complete redo of the build pipeline that backs Ember apps. It is primarily how we're going to accommodate and get a lot of the general JavaScript ecosystem features that we have wanted and been sort of drooling over for the last year, 2 years. Things like tree shaking automatically, more intelligent bundling, packaging, and whatnot. And Embroider is doing well. There's a group of folks that are pushing forward a lot of the details in apps. At LinkedIn, we have we just deployed an app to production with using Embroider by default just I don't know, little bit ago, week, 2 weeks, something like that, and it went well. We're working to make that the default stack for all of our internal apps as well. So I think the main blocker to Embroider is just getting more testers, getting more people out there. That's why in the EmberCLI 3.26 blueprint, add-ons automatically test against Embroider by default, to encourage add-ons to begin testing and figuring out what they're going to have to do. Some add-ons are not compatible with Embroider conceptually, because they do sort of imperative build code that isn't quite valid under the Embroider sort of paradigm. But lots of add-ons, probably the majority of add-ons, don't have any imperative build code and can just leverage Embroider out of the box, and it works just fine. Anyways, we think add-ons should be actively testing themselves against Embroider today, like right now, like 3 months ago, probably, but right now, at least, if you didn't do it 3 months ago. So that leaves us, okay, what about apps? Right now, there are open pull requests to EmberCLI to make Embroider the default build pipeline for new apps. If that lands in the next day or two, that means it'll be in Ember 3.27. If that doesn't, EmberCLI 3.27, sorry. If it doesn't, then it'll be EmberCLI 3.28. Yay, train model. We don't got to worry about that. But that's sort of the state of things. The default blueprint will only have will have things set at the most compatible set of settings. So not the various strict flags will not be turned on, but apps can obviously turn them on if they are comfortable in doing it. Okay, so then the last one of the projects was engines. I want to talk about Embroider first, because I think understanding Embroider's landing timeline is useful when talking about engines, because a lot of people that I talk to kind of think that Embroider makes engines obsolete or unneeded. And I think that's just not quite correct. There's a number of primary features that Ember Engines does, that one of which is build time isolation and bundling of individual assets. Another is runtime isolation, so that at runtime you can load, let's say, an admin panel or something engine into your app and have it be isolated from the rest of your app's code. Embroider does not have a thing. It doesn't even try. It doesn't want to do it. That's not a thing that Embroider cares about. And the other thing is the sort of on disk separation that you get by having a logical root path for a subtree. So like you can say, if you're using something like GitHub's code owners or any other kind of team ownership system where you might want to have a team that owns this directory and everything under it, that is much easier to do with engines than it is to do with classic apps. Because with classic apps, you have files that would be logically owned by different teams across many different folders. So you might have a team that owns a subpath of app components and another that owns a subpath under and then that same team also has subpaths under app routes and app templates, and that becomes a bit annoying to manage. Just as an example of another thing that Engines does. It's useful to think about those three features because I think the build time aspect of Engines goes away when Embroider ships as default and people can migrate to Embroider. You no longer need to use Engines to get a route subpath to be lazily loaded. You also no longer will need to use Engines to get individual components to be mounted, like curly mount in the template, lazily either. Embroider can provide those features out of the box without needing Engines. However, the other two things are still important, and Engines will continue to provide. So I guess TLDR, hopefully, of the build code that is involved with Ember Engines will go away under Embroider, but Ember Engines as a project and as a lifestyle doesn't really go away at all.
That makes sense. So the things that Engines was supposed to do will be enhanced by Embroider, and people can stop using Engines as a hack once Embroider fully lands.
Correct. Lots of apps that I work on end up trying to bypass completely the isolation aspect of Engines, the runtime isolation aspect, and just pass every possible service from the app down into the engine because they don't really want the isolation. They just want the lazy assets. So that kind of paradigm can just go away. Like that. Yeah. That's ideally going to be gone.
Exciting, definitely. Here's another thank you for Rob. Rob has been a great partner in improving the TypeScript experience in Ember. I'm grateful that he has always been super responsive to our needs as we've changed the way things worked over the years and is now helping to champion the official TypeScript support. The Ember community is lucky to have you, Rob. Thank you.
Okay, that's surprising. I don't know, if you look back, if you'd asked 3 years ago me if my name and positivity with TypeScript will be related to each other, and I think the answer would be very clearly no. Yeah. So maybe I've done some personal growth. I don't know. We'll see.
We won't call it that. All right, here's our next question. Embroider's pull approach promises to optimize all of the facets of building Ember apps. Many developers are reporting success importing their apps and add-ons to Embroider. Sadly, none of these developers seem to be working in Windows shops. Will more focus be given to issues affecting Windows?
Yes, that's a good question. A real quick, almost immediately out of date anecdote. Windows support is broken on Embroider 0.32, I think it was. And there's an open issue. There's 2 or 3 open issues about that. We have active pull requests in flight that fix all known Windows compatibility, and we have successful builds in our own test suite locally on Windows boxes for Embroider master branch right now. That PR is just pending another one to land first, but it is going to land and it'll be included in the next Embroider release. So that's great. That fixes all of the known things that have been reported and gets us successfully back to the case of testing and running it. The the thing that so then after that lands, we have another PR that's open that adds Windows CI to Embroider. So all the Embroider's test suites, each of the individual suites, I think except its own local linting, but whatever, is going to run under Windows and Linux, not Mac OS, because there's some flakiness in GitHub Actions on Mac OS, but I don't think that's terribly important to this question. Yeah, so that's part of it. So that we will not be able to introduce new features that break Windows because we're automatically adding, testing everything in like a matrix style. We will have like 100 CI jobs, but like, so be it. So I think that's the short answer to fix the near-term problem. The longer-term problem, which is I think is also sort of inferred or talked about here, is that there just aren't a lot of primarily Windows developers on in sort of the Ember space, I would say. And I think that is not actually true. It's just they're not, the ones that are there aren't vocal, and they're not participating. And maybe they feel like they don't belong. Now, I hope that is not true. I really don't want that to be the case. I was a guy as a Windows developer that the first time I went to a Ruby conference, this is back in like 2011 or something. And I was a guy that had a Windows laptop sitting at a Ruby conference in a sea full of MacBook Pros. And like, I felt like super like a crazy person, but I don't want other people in our ecosystem to feel that way. And they shouldn't. There are specific problems that have to do, there are specific issues on the Windows side, both for Node in general, unrelated to Ember, and also some stuff that we have self-imposed. For example, the fundamental reliance on symlinks, as an example. Those things we can make better. Embroider also makes some of them better a lot as well. In some future realm, when all add-ons are V2 add-ons, there will also be a massive reduction in I/O, which will also really significantly improve Windows build performance as well.
That's great to know. My husband is a Windows user, and he is always asking me this question, and I keep telling him to speak up and get involved. So maybe we can encourage Windows users to give us more feedback. I know that would be super helpful. Speaking of Ruby, I first met Rob at a Ruby conference in Vermont when, after my talk about Rails APIs, all of his questions were about this new Ember framework he just started using. Little did I know that I was talking with a future leading contributor to Ember, but I'm grateful that he hasn't stopped asking and answering questions. We're all so much better off with Rob's sharp mind and helpful spirit in our community.
That's great. I wish I could go back to Vermont. That conference, Vermont Ruby conference, Burlington Ruby, I think is what it was named. That was an amazing conference. I think I went there all 3 times they had it. It was a great conference.
Yeah, there are some really great conferences that just stick with you. Of course, I think EmberConf is one of those. Yeah.
Now I don't even use Ruby, but I'm like, I want to go back. I want
to hang out with Ruby folks. All Things Open, that's held in Raleigh, North Carolina every year. That's my kind of diamond conference. Anyway, back to the questions. Our next one is Fastboot is a great SSR, but an SSR needs caching, state transfer, rehydration, and optimization of initial CSS and JS bundling to optimize time to first interactive, the feature that defines the user startup experience. Today, developers are left to cobble the pieces together with a relatively little guidance. Are there plans to grow beyond Fastboot to an opinionated framework that integrates all of these elements of a great first time to interactive?
I think the answer is yes. We are going to continue to improve things. I mentioned a little bit earlier that we're going to be doing, or we have been having Fastboot team meetings. I think that is a really big first step. One of the primary functions of that team right now is landing the improvements we need to enable rehydration by default, which is one of the things listed here. Solving that is like a framework level thing, a problem, if you will. The rest of the pieces are around what combinations of things are required for a good app serving pipeline, and things around caching, things around how to know what initials JS and CSS to bundle, that kind of stuff. Those are slightly separate and different than like the internals details of how rendering happens, how SSR happens. I think we have to make changes to both sides. But I guess the short answer is yes, I expect us to properly solve this problem and have it be a bit more of a nice out of the box experience. But I don't think it's going to happen in the next month or two. It's going to be a thing we're going to be slowly driving things forward over the line. Like, for example, I think at some point we'll probably end up with fast boot in the default Ember or CLI blueprint. I don't think that's terribly far away, but we have to fix this rehydration problem. We probably also have to fix a number of issues with the dev server ergonomics and details around that. There's some specific issues with build times and like how do you handle caching without trolling yourself with caching, because caching validation, yay. But all of that stuff we need to sort of delve into. Folks that are interested in that space and have time to at least contribute their use cases should totally join the Fast Boot channel and chime in and chat with the Fast Boot team, join those meetings. Even if you don't have time to do physical work, getting your use cases and getting your how do you use things? What are the failing points for you today, etc. That is going to shape the future direction that we end up going. So please get involved.
Yes, definitely. Getting involved is the best way to get anything done in Ember. I very firmly believe that. Let's see, our next thank you note. Rob and I have worked together almost every day for the last 5 years. It's unusual for a day to go by where we don't get on voice chat together. He's one of the most talented engineers I've ever worked with in my long career and one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. I very much appreciate the work he does and the collaborations we have together. All right, our next question. Ooh, I've been waiting for this question. Here we go. What are some things, current or future, where Ember has analyzed other frameworks and ecosystems and said, this is a good fit, let's adopt this? Conversely, what are some of the things where we've said, we are definitely staying away from that? And can you talk about the reasoning behind each?
Yes. Okay, so there's a few. There's a couple that are in both camps, which is I think a little bit funny. I'm going to say hooks is a good example. React's hooks. We sort of poured over and thought through and really tried to understand the point of hooks as a team. Now, thankfully, much smarter people than me did that. I just fix bugs. I don't actually think about things like this, the complicated computer science problems. But thankfully, we've got people that are good at that too. And so lots of the things you see coming up, referenced from one of the earlier questions, resources, effects, having helpers that you can invoke from JavaScript. All of that stuff is about solving the composability problems that hooks solves without introducing some of the imperative difficulty to reason about state problems. So I think hooks is actually an example of a little bit of both. It's a little bit of what we wanted to learn, like what is the core piece that is really important and makes it enabling for React users, and also what is the thing that makes it a really sharp tool that you shouldn't be running around in the kitchen with. So both sides of that. Next example off the cuff would be imports and like sort of leveraging standard packaging and bundling. Because we had our own sort of bespoke build system, and we've had it for a long time, long before the sort of JavaScript community had a de facto standard bundling system. At least that is my perspective. The time for us to have our own custom solutions is gone. Like we don't need it anymore, and leveraging standard JS tooling will just get us further faster with less headaches than our own custom thing. And that's what Embroider is trying to solve. That's why we're pushing so hard on Embroider. I just mentioned before, Embroider hopefully will be enabled in a version very soon, whether it be 327 or 328, but still pretty soon in the lifespan of Ember. And the last example off the top of my head that I wanted to call out was a thing that we want to stay away from is imperative render functions. Now, they can be very powerful. You can return totally different subsets of DOM and totally different things every time the render function is invoked. But that's also a massive foot gun. It's very difficult to maintain stability. It's very difficult to have local reasoning within a subtree. I don't think you're going to see us go away from our sort of declarative template system to something that's more imperative or straight up render function style. Like, I think those are the best examples I've got.
Phew. I'm happy to hear about all of those things. Rob has helped me in so many ways, I can't really count them. I've learned a ton from him, from his incredibly thorough code reviews to his constant insights into better code design and best practices. I really don't know how he keeps up with it all, but I'm very grateful that he does, and I don't think the Ember community could exist without him. Plus 1,000 for that one. I really don't know how you keep up. Like, I've been trying to catch up, Rob, and I don't think it's possible.
I can tell you, I'll put this one to rest. I think we have a question somewhere about this as well. The answer is I don't keep up.
Okay. All right. Well, you do a good job pretending then.
That's fake it till you make it, right? Isn't that a thing? People say that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're right, but
I don't know. I think there's a balance, and whatever it is, you've found it. Which initiatives or current ideas have you the most excited for the future of Ember and our community?
This is a pretty hard question because both I'm too in the weeds, like sort of tactically working on this bug or that bug or whatever, and rarely get to poke my head up above forest treetop level to look down and see the big structure. There's a lot of planning that we do to try to make sure the features work together well, etc. But most of the time I'm working at a very local sort of micro level. So as far as big features, I think that are going to make a big impact to our users, I think Embroider is #1 on my list. It means that a lot of the code that I wrote for the current build pipeline that Ember CLI has gets to die, and I think that is very lovely. I don't know what old me was thinking, and yeah, it got us so far. It got us a long way, but it's definitely showing its age and needs to be replaced. I think Embroider unlocks lots of things, lots of improvements to our build time, and also to our bundle sizes and app runtime speeds and performance, like lighthouse numbers and whatnot. I think that's a pretty big thing. And then I guess I know this said most excited, but I can't say only one thing. So I guess the other one, I'm just going to put a really big bucket, which is template language improvements. I think the things that we've been doing to rationalize and make the template language itself a fully rationalized actual language that works independently. It isn't just let's just do JavaScript and templates, but is like a real thing that you can reason through and like have reactivity and understand how it works, and the combination of modifiers and assume probably some sort of thing that does side effects, and I think that is a really nice place.
Speaking of building and bundlers and all of that, what would it take for Ember CLI to support Snowpack or Vite?
It would take some work. So I'm going to assume we're talking about on top of, so it is just not going to happen on top of the classic build pipeline. We're just not going to do it. It's not worth the effort. It is a bit at counter purposes to the Embroider effort. So assuming Embroider, which, like I said before, is hopefully going to be shipping by default for new apps in the 327, 328 timeframe. It is very feasible to add a Snowpack or Vite builder, or sorry, packager, bundler, sorry, whatever the name is, that thing is, sorry, in under Embroider. We have separate packages in Embroider space for that. And it's structured intentionally to allow Embroider to have pluggable packagers. Maybe these aren't done, and none of this is done, but you could totally imagine an ES build one, a SWC related thing, a Snowpack, Vite, etc. Like all of those fit, and they should be siblings of the current Webpack packager. And the reason we kept the Webpackiness of the Webpack one, sort of isolated it behind its own opt-in manual API, hey, I really want to give you some Webpack config, is because we expect most people to be able to drop one in as a replacement for the other, unless they're doing custom web shenanigans with the whatever packager they were on before, whether it be Webpack config, or if we ship a Snowpack one, that you're doing magical Snowpack things. I don't know what that is, but whatever. So I think the question is, what will it take? The answer is it'll take getting onto Embroider and then someone writing a packager for those things. And I think you should keep an eye out for EdStock this year. I think it's Tuesday, if I recall. Anyways, whatever day it is, we'll look at the schedule. You can figure it out. And that you'll have loads of information in there.
That sounds awesome. I really think it's very clever that Embroider is trying to work in such a way that you could just put in whichever packager you want to use. That's incredible to me. Here we've got two thank yous. Robert has inspired me to work to become a great developer. I appreciate his generous attitude, how much he works to help other people, and his enthusiasm for building awesome things. The rwjblue machine is all you could ask for. Thank you, Rob, for always being there for any kind of issue, from helping me with my first RFC to debugging some weird issue. We all thank you. Oh, that's nice and true. Speaking of which, you contribute so much to the Ember community. So what's your strategy to prevent burnout? I'm sure that we would all love to hear a lot about that.
So I don't really have a concrete strategy. The nice thing is, I joined LinkedIn roughly 4.5 years ago, and my boss at LinkedIn, who considers himself an engineering gardener, is probably the best boss I've had ever. And he's considered his mission in life to make sure that I have a good work-life balance. And he's instituted some specific, let's say, incentives work-wise to make sure that I'm not working too much on the weekends and nights and whatnot. So I think that's good. The fact that LinkedIn has me working on open source as my regular duties for work, and maintaining the tools and the things that we need to build our apps, lets me not have to do all of that on my own time in my own nights and weekends, which is what it was before then. So I think that's probably the biggest factor. And if you look at my GitHub history back, in the 2015, 2016 timeframe, like I was very active every day of the week. If you look at the hours breakdown, it was all the time. You couldn't really even tell where a sleep pattern was, etc. I think if you look at it today, I think it looks much better. You can see where I'm taking vacations. You can see where I'm not working as much on the weekends. So anyways, I'm trying to be a bit more sustainable there. I think also there's a bit of a problem that I didn't realize existed, but really did, which was that by me doing all of the things, I sort of made it impossible for other people to step up and like sort of spread their wings and do things. So I think stepping back slightly, not like dropping things or forgetting things or not getting things done, but not being the only person that can take on everything, has let a lot of other folks step up in different projects where they are experts or they feel confident and pop in and help out and push things forward. So I don't know.
Yeah, you've done that for me with Ember Template. Like, I'm much more confident having opinions about it and contributing there than I would have before. So seems good. Here's a note from the time I started working with Ember 5 years ago. Rob has consistently made the time to help me, from unblocking me on basic Ember issues I was confused about to helping us get unstuck in the early days of Ember CLI TypeScript. These days, I am glad to call him not only a colleague, but a friend. Another TypeScript message for you there, Rob. You really
I don't know what I've done
along in your
in life.
journey.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Good job. All right, for our next question, we've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm just going to give us that gentle time check. We have about 4 more questions, so we'll see how we do. What do you think would increase the adoption of Ember?
So I think so I have a concrete answer here, but I want everyone to realize that it comes from a place of love. And I think the answer is we all need to be a little less comfortable with ourselves, with our increase in productivity, and be a bit more vocal about telling people about it. I think our users tend to be people that gravitate towards Ember tend to be very practical and want to use shared solutions, and they're just trying to get their job done. They're just trying to build their app. And because we kind of self-select for that subset, because otherwise, if you were looking for the shiny thing, you'd be going somewhere else, let me tell you. And you know, the folks that are just trying to keep their heads down and get their jobs done and ship their features on time over 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, whatever. Those folks are not often the folks that are going to chime up and speak out and go and convince their colleagues or convince their local groups or whatever. Anyways, I think people need to be energized. And I think hopefully the things that we're doing at the framework core level are energizing folks. Things like the template layer improvements, things like the build pipeline improvements with Embroider, where things just drop in and just work nicer. And picking up Ember for someone who is proficient in another framework is very convenient and easy because you use all the tools that you already have. And it's not like a not invented here syndrome where everything is a bespoke Ember special thing. I think that's where we go. So I guess the thing that we need to do is we need to market. We need to tell everyone how awesome Ember is and how much more productive we can be as teams of developers. Anyways.
Yes, 100 plus 1,000 to that, if I could. It really does take coming out of your comfort zone and learning how to communicate. Like, I think we need to just send everybody like find a good book and send it to everyone. Here's your manual on how to talk about Ember. And go from there. Let's see. Okay, Rob, thank you for the countless code reviews and your general positivity. Thanks for carrying the community forward over the past 9 years. I'm always amazed at the amount of care and thoughtfulness you put into your work. We couldn't do this without you. And thank you for fixing all the things. That's a great one. So Rob, here's a great question. How do you see Ember fitting into the larger landscape of front-end tooling in the future? How can we work more with other communities like React or Vue to collaborate on tooling as opposed to always having our own solutions to the problems that all communities share?
Yeah, so this is a good question. I think there's if you listen to the transcript or read the transcript or whatever, you don't listen to a transcript, you know what I mean, of the things that we've already said on the call, like you'll hear a repeated message, which is that we need to not be doing our own special thing. We need to be leveraging the tooling that other people are doing or writing, and then do what we do best, which is figure out the commonalities, figure out how to improve them, make things that are more ergonomic. One example is, like, I don't see a lot of, there's a number of things that we do really well. Things like having a nice integrated debug flag tooling to where you can have deprecation assertions and they get automatically stripped. A thing that we will soon have, merged RFCs, but still in implementation, which is the deprecation staging and rolling rollout of deprecations, so add-ons can hit and solve deprecations first. Another thing that we have is like, those things are not really present in other ecosystems. Things like the deprecation workflow that we have, like a way to tell people, hey, these things are deprecated. I'm going to deal with this before the next major, but not right now. Silence that thing. Like, that set of tooling just doesn't really exist. And it's sorry, outside Ember. And I think that's a thing we can totally give to the rest of the JavaScript ecosystem, just like we're taking the things they're building. Like, we use Babel. We've used Babel for a long time. Like, Babel 6 was launched at an Ember conference. Like, that's how early days we were in Babel. Like, I think realistically, we have a lot of things to offer, and there's a lot of stuff that we do incredibly well. Part of the reason for that is because we built the pipeline ourselves so that we could scratch the itches that we had. We could solve the problems that we had. But now that we're able to leverage standard tooling, we can now contribute those things outwards as well. And I think that is big. Another example, sorry, I know I was not listing examples anymore, but another example is like Ember Try. Like, having a way to quickly test your thing against different combinations of other packages is a pain point in the JavaScript ecosystem broadly, not just in Ember, not just in a front-end space, but for Node apps, for anybody making a library that they distribute that's consumed. Everyone has that problem. And we've solved it really well, and EmberTry does a great job. And as we continue to decouple it from like Ember CLI internal details and whatnot, which it's not terribly coupled, but there's things there. I think we're going to be able to see that set of tooling be broadly adoptable across ecosystems.
That's a great idea. We need like a JavaScript framework roundtable or something. All right.
Like a hexagon or something instead of a round table.
We could make it, we could update. Yeah, make it like a
I like size.
Honeycomb shape.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Deal. Done. Rob has always been one of the best colleagues I've ever had. His dedication to always making things better for others is an ethos I wish more people had, but Rob has enough of it for 100 developers. I only wish that we had 99 more Robs to help shoulder the impactful work he takes on. Rob, your selflessness inspires me, but please be a little more selfish with your personal time. Which, thanks to your awesome boss, you're getting better at, right?
Trying to.
Yeah. All right. So at this point, probably everyone who's active in the Ember community knows rwjblue. Do you have any funny I'm famous stories?
Well, so first of all, I'm not famous. In like the world stage sense, we are a very small microcosm. I have had a few scenarios that I never really expected to have before. Like I was on a train with my family going to the zoo, and someone walked up to me that I hadn't met and like started chatting with me and like knew details about me. And you know, whatever, just had a nice convo. I didn't really ask them anything. They didn't say where they knew me from or anything. I'm just assuming I forgot this person. But it turns out at the end of the conversation, they're like, oh, darn, I talk to you all the time on GitHub. Sorry, I'm so-and-so, right? That kind of thing. The other one is, let me just tell everyone here, and for anybody that might watch later, it is not possible to drink beers from 600 people in one night. You can't do it. Don't try. Please don't.
Oh, there's your PSA, helping us all stay healthy. All right, and we're going to get to one more. Thank you. I've used Ember professionally for over 7 years, and Rob has consistently been either front and center on different major pieces in the ecosystem or behind the scenes, moving the community in a positive direction and pushing forward some of the best ideas in the front end space as a whole. Thank you for all the hard work, and know there are lots of folks out there who greatly appreciate all the effort you put into making Ember and its development community best in class. Yeah. I'm sorry, these are making me a little bit emotional because I feel like all these things, just a lot of deep appreciation for everything that you do, Rob. In closing, what would you say to folks who haven't tried Ember yet or haven't tried Ember lately? Why should they give it a go?
I think there's two different answers, I guess. If you haven't tried Ember yet, I think that is, there's just different answers. It's not necessarily easier to answer. I think the thing that I personally gravitate towards is don't pick the tech, solve your problem, and figure out what your problem is and what thing you're trying to solve, and then use the tool that is best for solving that. And I think Ember is solidly the best tool to get productive off the ground in a way that is scalable across people. That isn't the case in every other ecosystem in JavaScript space. There's lots of folks making framework combinations of different sets of tools in like React or Vue or whatever. Like that's totally a thing. And you can definitely find stuff that works really well for you and gives you a end-to-end sort of Ember-like experience. But those aren't official projects. Those aren't part of the main line. And I think having that be the default stack, having the default stack try to solve basically all of your primary developer problems, I think is really important. I think that's why I would tell someone to reach for Ember. But again, it's not about using Ember and finding a problem. It's about having a problem and Ember being the right tool for the job. Sometimes it's not. I'll be the first to admit. Sometimes you just need an API server, or sometimes you sometimes it isn't Ember, but a lot of times it is. And then the other side was for someone who's tried Ember before, but now is coming back to why should they try it again? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think for that person, I think the thing to say there is it's changed a lot. It's changed in a way that's been iterative and gradually improving over time, not breaking, being compatible improvements. But it's changed significantly since the pre-Octane days. Things like just using regular classes, being able to compose your components in a convenient way. Name blocks is huge, for example, and we're still working through how we teach that. But anyways, the specifics about how Ember works internally is dramatically different and improved in a way that makes it massively easier to adopt and pick up and learn. And I think that's worth another look.
All right. So for everyone that's attended today, thank you so much for being here. Please remember to post any other questions that you might have in the AMA rwjblue channel on the Ember Discord server, and we'll try to get those answered for you as best we can, especially now that we have that handy reply feature. I hope that you all enjoy the rest of EmberConf, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for coming, y'all.